What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video on the Texas Rangers Report. And in this video, I'm going to be going over three prospects that, in my opinion, have the chance to be added to the 40-man roster this year and have a major league call-up as well. So the first guy on this list is Jason Martin. He actually has already played in the major leagues for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Rangers acquired him whenever they signed him as a minor league free agent this year. However, I think Jason Martin has a chance to be one of the guys that gets added to the 40-man and gets a call-up this year. This is because he has had major league experience already, given it wasn't a lot of experience, so you shouldn't take that for granted. However, he was at the Rangers spring training site and he played extremely well there. And so far in 19 at-bats at AAA Round Rock, Jason Martin is batting .316 with a 1.146 OPS with 2 home runs. And those are great batting stats. However, the thing that intrigues me as well is that he can play any outfield position. You can throw him at left, you can throw him at center, and you can throw him at right. Although, given that we have Adolis locking down center and Joey Gallo locking down right, you'd most likely see Jason Martin playing left field. But he's extremely athletic, and he's only 25 years old, so that's kind of in the middle where he's still young, but in a few years he's going to not have the prospect status anymore. And yes, I know he isn't a Rangers top 3 prospect, but he still is in the Rangers farm system, and he's still young enough to be considered a prospect, at least in my opinion. And the reason why I didn't add one of the Rangers top prospects right here, like a Steel Walker type of player, is because think about Adolis Garcia. He bounced around with the Cardinals and now he's with the Rangers, but the Rangers didn't even keep him on the 40-man roster. They designated him for assignment this year. And then they eventually brought him up after a good spring training. They brought him up, and now he's impressing. So sometimes it's the guys that aren't top prospects that need the second chance to prove himself, and that just might be Jason Martin. I'm not saying that he's going to be an all-star or even have as big of an impact that Adolis has had so far on the team, but I think Jason Martin should at least be considered whenever the Rangers are calling up prospects later in the year. The second guy on this list is Curtis Terry, and I think a call-up for Curtis Terry could actually come sooner rather than later. He's a first baseman in the Rangers organization, and through 24 at-bats at AAA, he's batted .458, and he's had an OPS of 1,583 with 4 home runs. Now, the thing with Curtis Terry is he's a great hitter and he has a lot of pop. However, he's a terrible runner and he doesn't offer much defensively. So you could throw him in at first base, but I think the Rangers are better if they have Nate Loud play first base. I think Curtis Terry would be better if he played as the DH. He is 24 years old, so 1 year younger than Jason Martin, although he was in the Rangers spring training and he didn't do as good as Jason Martin, but I still think the Rangers like what they saw from him. He didn't light it up on in games with the stats, but I do think that the scouts and the coaches like what they saw from Curtis Terry. But now he's lighting it up in AAA with some really impressive numbers. And the reason why I think a call-up for Curtis Terry could happen sooner rather than later is because David Dahl has been struggling, and you could move Curtis Terry to DH, and you can move Willie Calhoun to left field, and you could see how that works out. Just like Jason Martin, Curtis Terry needs to be added to the 40-man roster by next year in order to be protected from the Rule 5 draft. So, in my opinion, I think Curtis Terry could be taken in the Rule 5 draft. Just in case you guys don't know what that means, the Rule 5 draft is whenever teams go into the winter meetings and then they draft Rule 5 eligible players. And whenever players are drafted, they're supposed to stay on the Major League club for the entire year. But if they don't stay on the club, they're offered back to the previous club for $100,000. So our Rule 5 draft pick this year was Brett DeGeis. And so far, I think the plan is to keep him there. But if not, we offer him back to the Dodgers for $100,000. We'd be risking losing Curtis Terry and Jason Martin if we don't add them to the 40-man roster. So my thought is, why not add them now? See what you have in them, and then you can make that decision later if you want to keep them or not. The next guy on this list at number 3 is Josh Jung. This one makes a lot of sense. He's the Rangers' #1 prospect. He is injured right now. However, he should be starting minor league games later this month, which is really good to hear. Unlike Curtis Terry and Jason Martin, Josh Jung doesn't need to be added to the 40-man roster this year. However, I think he's an extremely talented player that you just have to call him up and see what you have in Josh Jung. I mean, granted, if he is struggling in the minors whenever the All-Star break rolls around, maybe you don't call him up. Maybe you just let him stick it out in the minors. But if he's raking in AAA around the All-Star break, I think it's time to call Josh Jung up, especially because Brock Holt, he's been struggling with a lot of injuries. So you could get rid of Brock Holt, designate him for assignment, and that would create a 40-man spot, and then you can call up Josh Jung. This also makes a lot of sense because it's been rumored that Josh Jung will be most likely called up to the major leagues around the All-Star break. But granted, Josh Jung has to prove it at the minor league level first. It can't just be given to Josh Jung. So those are the 3 prospects that I think have the chance to be added to the 40-man roster and be called up to the major league roster this season. If you guys have any other players that you have in mind, like Carl Chester, the guy that we got as the player to be named later in the Nate Loud trade, or Steele Walker, or maybe even Hans Kraus, let me know in the comments section down below. But with that being said, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.